Hello, everyone, to the BIMverso podcast. Here we talk about BIM and another technologies. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribing and share this video with your friends. Today we will address the topic of using BIM and AI in the early stage of urban design. And to talk to me about this subject, we have here Guillermo Corral. I would like to thank you, Guillermo, for accepting my invitation.
Hello, Rogerio. Thanks very much. Obrigado. Great to be here in this such relevant podcast for the industry and society in general.
Thank you. Guillermo is a Spanish architect in urban design. He lives in Barcelona with experience as urban planning consultancy for a public and private sector. He also lectured in Ziggurat Global Master in Smart City Management. My friend, you are a lecturer, a professor in Smart City course in Ziggurat. And here we will talk about BIM, of course, but I would like to ask you the main difference of these two concepts. For example, when I talking about BIM in urban scale, we're talking about SIM and city information modeling.
Exactly.
And we have this another concept that we call smart cities. What's the difference, in your opinion, about these two concepts?
I think I will introduce, and I don't want to add complexity, but I'll introduce a third concept to explain the difference between both, which is digital twins. Okay? These all of the same get mixed up, but they are not the same. Okay? I think building information modeling is a methodology to work. So my message is that applies regardless scale. It's the same, like you can do BIM if you work or design a small building, and you can do BIM if you design or work in a big building. So this is the same. If you get this comparison to cities, at the end, cities are a complex, of course, a complex network of buildings. But it's just a jump in scale, not a change of mindset. So at the end, city information modeling is BIM escalated. That's my summary. Then
I agree.
if we go to smart cities, we get into more complexity, because actually you were referring to the smart city course, and what brings me tranquility about that is that the lecturers board is very diverse. So we are a lot of people involved in this board, and therefore I just touch on what I am expert, which is the built environment. Why do I say that? Because smart cities are conceived in many different ways. There was a first generation in which technology was the main objective, meaning that everything had to be digitalized and we had to apply emerging technologies, and that was it. And then we go into a second generation, which for example, my director of this master's, Chris Diamond, says is a more softer definition, which is that a smart city uses technology as an instrument to enhance people well-being. Okay? And people well-being is a range of disciplines. And in this case, just not architects work for people's well-being, but we do work. And finalizing with this smart city definition, the problem is that engineers, especially people related to, let's say, the telecommunications, digital infrastructure, digital companies, telecommunications companies have been getting, let's say, the protagonism in cities, while the architect, who has always been the main character in cities because we've influenced urban planning, even building design, we've lost our position, in my opinion. Our position has been lost. And now we are trying to take our position back as planners, as holistic professionals, and then also other professionals from the human science to take place in the smart city. That's why the smart city goes beyond BIM. Okay? And then finally, I was introducing digital twins because the digital twin is the overall arrangement of technologies involved, meaning that building information modeling is not a technology, is a methodology to work. So then if you apply building information modeling, if you apply GIS, which is another methodology, if you apply the Internet of Things, if you apply 5G, Bluetooth as connectivity, and so on, you end up having a digital twin, which enables you to manage the city digitally. Basically, the name is because you have a twin in the digital world, in the cloud. The city still exists and it is there with its problems. The only difference is that you have it modeled, and as you have it modeled, you can anticipate potential problems, risks or hazards, because the city is more or less, depending on the complexity of the digital twin, of course, is more or less behaving as the existing city. And that's where smart cities have to go to. So in this overall universe, building information modeling is very meaningful, of course, but it's just one of the tools that should be involved. BIM, SIM, okay, city information modeling, should be involved in the overall digital twin. We should not forget about BIM because in addition to the overall model of the city, of city information modeling, BIM gets relevant when different practitioners have to get involved as stakeholders. So for example, you are doing a planning application and now many authorities are moving on to the BIM compliance on the mandatory BIM. And BIM means that you can insert your piece or you can insert your model into the overall digital twin. So BIM is very relevant here. It's just an element, but it's very relevant.
Awesome. I totally agree. And why use BIM for early stage urban design or urban planning?
So actually, as discussed previously when preparing this, I have something to share. Because again, like I think we can be very insightful here, but people want to see real examples, right? And how this takes place, let's say in the daily basis of our profession, right? So I discovered a software which is basically let's say, I think it's designed for early stage, okay, which is Autodesk Forma. You can see many videos, tutorials, etc. But again, I would repeat, this is a methodology, so it's not about the software or the specific tool. The architect is there, and the tool is just an ally, okay? So within this alliance, we have this fake layout of these 5 buildings. As you can see, we have the subject site, which is the red surface. So we are not going to analyze the full city. We don't need to. We are just architects that work on a planning application. Maybe our client is a developer, and we want to get planning permission for this. So before, this is not as complex as other BIM projects, or other BIM softwares that many people in the audience might be used to. This is designed for early stage. So for people like me that nowadays, at this stage, just to give a simple example, we don't decide where a door goes, or if the building is brick or cladding, or if the windows are in a certain way or another way, right? We have details here overall, so we do have them, but we are in early stage, as you said, Rogerio, so this is meaningful for that. And what this does is that we have this fake layout. Of course, don't forget about the context. The context is very important for our analysis. So in our potential planning application or feasibility, we are going to provide evidence-based data or evidence-based insights defending or showing that it should be improved, our design, right? That our design is working or should be improved. So one of the main items in our designs, which is critical, is sunlight daylight, especially in those countries closer to the poles, rather south or north, that have less, let's say, sunlight potential overall. And again, going back to the smart city definition, this is not only a design purpose. If we are talking about residential or workspaces, sun is gonna influence the well-being of workers or residents, right? So we have our well-being item here. So you can see that in really quick So I had the analysis prepared, but I can tell you that if the model is not complex, as you can see here, we are working in volumes, the analysis comes in 1-2 minutes, okay? So we can see there that we have an internal, maybe potential communal area, and we see this is especially relevant for designing this communal area. For example, if a landscape architects come here, where should sitting spaces be? Okay, or if we are in a hot climate, where do we put our refuge, for a heat wave, etc.? What is better? So it informs design and it anticipates potential problems, meaning that the design not to be compliant with sunlight, for example, etc. Okay. I just run quick because we just want to give the main specifics of the program, but this is a fake layout designed by the proper software, so you can even explore with a trial how this program works. I forgot to say that there are other public realm areas in the front that don't work as good because you are seeing this highlighted, but the software is identifying all site constraints. So we have here in the right a big compact building cell that is, of course, causing us overshadowing. So that's why you see this in red. So it's not just how the scheme works alone, it's also how it gets constrained by the existing features of the site. That's why at early stage it's important to assess the conditions, the boundary conditions. As for example, structural engineers also talk about boundary conditions. In architectural and urban design, we also have to assess boundary conditions from early stage. If we don't assess such at early stage, then when we do our complex model using BIM in post-planning and we have to go on detailing, etc., we can have a very important waste of time, because why shall we do a model in all its complexity if it doesn't work in the in the essentials in strategy? Similar here with solar energy. This is showing where to put solar panels. For example, I won't put solar panels in this building. This building, again, is having a lot of overshadowing. So solar panels should be in the lighter areas, in the lighter yellow areas. And as you can see, regardless the tall buildings, we don't have any clear yellow area to put solar panels. So this site is not perfect, okay, for putting solar panels overall.
You talking about a lot of information, and this is a great challenge for us. How to manage it, all this kind of information, how to put this in sometimes in the same place, to compare, to analyze. And what do you think about this challenge? How can we manage this information, all this information?
Exactly. So we were seeing actually a challenge just here live. First of all, this is a lot of information to digest. Okay. So sometimes we have a lot of data, but the problem is that we don't use data properly, or we don't have the tools to apply data in practical insights. Is, as we were saying before, I just wanted to share my screen and show examples, because we can stay on theory or we can stay on academia, but then it's about putting things into practice. So, for example, if the audience is listening to us, it's like, okay, these tools are amazing, but how can they impact in our daily work? Okay, and I have a challenge. For example, I'm working with a company in Dublin, in Ireland, which is Macomb Architecture and Urban Design. And we do both planning and post-planning. So we work at all stages of the projects. I think the post-planning, to be honest, is already in good shape. Like, companies are mindful and there's no discussion. Overall, there's no discussion about BIM to be, the advantages that BIM and other methodologies, lean, etc., that come to, with BIM are useful in construction, or detailed design plus construction. But as we think that early stage is simpler, there's a bit of pedagogy to be done, to be applied in early stage, because people don't yet realize that the same advantages that we have at post-planning, detail design stages, construction, etc., we can also have at early stage. So it's difficult to move people from old patterns of work to new patterns of work. One, I think a key word here is interoperability. Okay? I would say my message is interoperability. Among who? Well, interoperability among an office internally. So if you are an office manager, for example, you can say, okay, great, I can apply these technologies at post-planning and pre-planning, but I don't have same people because some people are more specialized in construction and other people are more specialized in master planning, urban design, early stage, feasibilities, etc. So among the office, there has to be interoperability between outputs that happen at early stage and then carrying the project in through construction. So interoperability within the office. I'm not naming any softwares now because it's not about softwares. It's about interoperability. You can use 3, 4, 5 softwares. If they are interoperable between each other, there's no issue. The problem is to use different tools and then to not be communicating together. And then externally. Externally with who? Externally with other people in the design team, engineers, etc., that you can really collaborate, not just people throwing their stuff and, okay, try to, in both sides, okay, I'm not complaining, like even engineers struggle with some architectural design that is not allowing for all the services that a building needs, even more and more complex nowadays. So interoperability between different offices and with the client. I've seen that putting a model in the screen for the client, visualization, okay, visualization within this interoperability, it eases communication a lot. Meetings shorten, really. It is significant how meetings shorten if you put a model in the screen, you are transparent as a designer, you advise the client. You communicate with the client. If you do this will happen. If you do that, this will happen. And finally, the other stakeholder, if you are working for a private client, this method of work at early stage has also need to be accessible at some point. Ideally fully, but we are not there yet, but at some point for the local authority or for the competent authority that needs to give you permission. And sometimes they can be picky. We can say they can be exigent. They can be putting troubles and not facilitating projects to happen. But it's also important to put your hats, put the hat that they have and say, okay, what they want from their perspective is that positive things happen in the city. And they need to understand if what you're presenting is positive. If you are convinced that something is positive, you'll show everything. And these methodologies are very strong in visualization. So if you are straightforward and you are honest, you can also use these tools as an ally to show the local authority, listen, what I'm doing is really good. It's going to enhance the environment. It's going to be a good project, but it's also going to cause a good impact on the site, on the environment. It's to scale. It's not impacting negatively in any of the existing areas. And you put it in the screen, or you even share the model. You even share an EFC or whatever, interoperability file type you share with the local authority or whoever is giving you planning permission, and they can navigate and assess things quicker and in certain times as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Interoperability is the key. In building design nowadays is more easier. We have 5 years ago, for example, but it's a challenge. Yet, but in SIM, it's more complicated. We have a lot of different kinds of software and systems and so on. It's very, very.
And actually, Rogerio, I'm just gonna provide a list of, for example, consultants and disciplines involved in just an urban design strategy. Okay, because I'm preparing actually public tender submissions for you are interested in a project that is public lead and you have to arrange a team. So it's not about the team involved, it's about the layers of information that should be integrated in a model, ideally as it information modeling. So you have the lead, which is an urban designer with a landscape architect. The landscape architect might aim to integrate trees. So what are the existing trees there? And other features. You have ecology, is the site water sensitive? Is it subject to flooding? You have civil engineering and traffic. So traffic layers. Potentially, you would like to have an image, a real image, with drones or whatever, 3D image of the heritage that's in place, because you want to integrate your project, or you want to integrate the sensitive buildings, valuable sensitive buildings, into your proposal. Cost, energy assessment. And I might be forgetting something else, but and I say it's not, I don't want to make a point here about complexity on design teams. I want to make a point here about complexity of information to be laid out in a city information model. Okay, and that's interoperability, because finally the urban design lead will have all the layers. Of course, it's also to have criteria and common sense, because sometimes all data is not useful. Depends. Okay, always depends on the objective. But the urban design lead will, switch layers off or on, depending on what information does he or she require for the final design proposal. So that's why interoperability is also crucial for early stage.
Yeah, I totally agree. And about AI, do you think this new technology can help us with this, or will it cause more problems?
I think we have to take a bit of perspective and a step back in analyzing what are the benefits of AI. Okay, because I think we have to step out the trend and assess the tool, really. And I'm optimistic. I just wanted to make this point, but generally I'm optimistic because it enhances workflows of everyone. We just need to think, every time we think on AI, we have to ask ourselves, why for? Okay? I can give you an example. If we are at early stage and we want to generate a visual of how that can look like, because, for example, sometimes I'm a bit skeptic regarding hyper-realistic CGIs. Okay? So if you put a line perspective, you just do a sketch, and you give AI kind of a similar sketch in style, okay? Because you say to AI, I don't want to have an hyper-realistic visual. I want to have something more like an artist impression, and you give something that's similar to that in style, AI will generate something. So if you have that as an ally for visualization for all stakeholders that I was mentioning before, that, for example, is a relevant tool, okay? Is relevant, is really useful. But you need to know why for, not just, okay, I've applied AI and I'm really great because AI is in this project. No, is why for, because, for example, maybe an hyper-realistic image of AI might not be useful because it's over-promising. Is not catching your design. It's overstating or over-promising. But if you are at early stage and you want to show how something could look like indicatively and use it as a visualization tool, AI learns from you. If you communicate accordingly to what you want and the why, again, I think is relevant. Then, of course, in planning, I think we are far away yet, but it will suppose a change because it learns from patterns. So at the end of the day, if you model a city through 1 year, a city has certain patterns that repeat every year. So AI is going to learn from those patterns and it's going to show you solutions. At the end, we shouldn't confuse this, because at the end is us, or should be us, taking decisions, because people are involved and impacted in our decisions. shouldn't be a machine taking decisions for us, but proposing scenarios. So AI is good for proposing scenarios, and then is public responsibles in this case, or practitioners, in the public and private sector, taking the correct decision according to evidence-based, and then is AI showing the scenarios and working with data, etc. I think for that data digestion, again, identifying patterns, identifying messages that data is giving us, and as humans we are not identifying, I think that would be great. But the end decision should be taken by the human responsible.
Yeah, of course. After ChatGPT, when you're talking about AI, everybody thinks about generative AI. It's some tools that will make something for me. And otherwise, when we can use it not to generate something, but to manage information for me. And in this case, help me to make a decision, for example.
Exactly. We should see it as an ally.
Yeah, of course. So, do you have any practical experience using this kind of tools in the private or public area?
So the experience that I have is that we are using AI in modeling. Okay, again, patterns. For example, in the private sector, we work for developers. And when you are doing, especially for example, Ireland is within a housing crisis. And, the scale of residential residential development has to be streamlined, and it has to be massive, both in new footprints, so greenfield, brownfield, vacant sites, but also maybe the retrofitting agenda. And that's a repetitive workflow. It's repetitive, okay? Because it has to be, because the challenge is massive. So if there is an economy of scale or a repetition, that doesn't mean that the design is going to be worse. The only thing is that you're going to streamline something that is an urgency. So when we are modeling at the early stage, for example, we have typologies, okay? Residential typologies. These typologies are going to repeat, of course. If you are assessing sites of 500 units, 1,000 units, master plans of 3,000 units, for example, you're going to work with 10 maximum residential typologies, or maybe 10 house types and then apartment typologies. AI is practical here. There was a lot of work that was repetitive on architectural design. And when you are doing a model at early stage, AI is very helpful because it is interpreting what do you want. You put parameters, you draw a line, and for example, you have a housing row, or generates a cell according to what you have already in the project. So that's my experience with AI on that side. And then I also wanted to talk about academia, because in the masters, I covered the built environment items, but I also refer to technological tools that can help to analyze and work for the built environment. And I put two examples. One is the Helsinki Energy and Climate Atlas, that, as I say, it's a complex tool. And I think, Rogerio, as I present it, I don't present it online. I wanted to interact now with it, but normally what I do is I put a snapshot because it's a complex tool, and sometimes it's difficult if your connection is not amazing. It's difficult to coordinate the tool and the video, but I'll provide you some snapshots so maybe you can integrate them in the podcast, okay? But both this tool and an investigation from MIT in the Cambridge area in Massachusetts in the United States assess energy performance and heating demand of buildings. So for example, let's just keep on the energy performance. They have big portions of city, or even the full city, with the energy performance rates. If you combine energy performance and social deprivation, areas with less rent, more social problems, etc. If you overlay those layers, you have immediate data or immediate information showing you where should you prioritize both action and grants. Because normally, in Europe, we are now in a retrofitting agenda. There's a lot of money coming from the European Union. there is, many people don't know, but there is a lot of money. And this money is going to people that know how to ask for it. But I think it would be very smart if local authorities were prioritizing local, national, international, if they were overlaying these two, and this is what we explain in the masters. So we have the social layer and we have the purely architectural layer about energy performance. So it's saying, yeah, we have money, but money is not infinite. Where should we prioritize it? Well, you overlay both, and the area which is worse in energy performance and high in social issues, there's where the money should go first. So those are the two examples I can give of that.
Awesome. My friend, thank you very, very, very much to be here with me in this conversation. And what are your final considerations? Be free to talk whatever you want.
Okay. So, well, thanks, Rogeri. I think it's been a really interesting conversation with you. And I'm sure we'll have the second on a new, let's say, I hope, updates on progress on how this is integrating in the industry. And I would clearly stay with the interoperability and multidisciplinary approach in projects, because sometimes the main challenges are not related to architectural design, I think, of course, design has to be very fully considered. We are architects, so that's the first message. Regardless these tools, design is first. Design comes first, okay? The tool is just an instrument. A tool is a methodology. It's not something that has to lead the thinking, okay? So that's the first message. And the second message is that sometimes the architectural design is not the main problem. The main problem is communication. And these tools ease communication a lot. And I think we agree on this. I think in post-planning is more assumed than in pre-planning. Because in pre-planning you say, well, okay, I'm not pouring concrete here, so this can be reversed, okay? When you are in construction, I'm not in construction, but I understand that sometimes you are asked for drawings in a certain, momentum, and if you don't submit something, the concrete is poured or something is, installed, crafted or whatever, and you can't go back. So in that case, BIM is crucial. But early stage this can work for that. It can work for that. Sometimes you have many years behind different stages. There's a difference between where a project is conceived and designed and when it's built. There's a time there, I know. But I think this interoperability between different tools and tools specifically designed or deployed for helping urban planners and people at early stage help for present, but also for future. That would be my conclusion.
Great. Thank you, my friends, and thank you for everyone that is with us until now. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribe and share it with your friends. If you would like to know a little bit about the Guillermo job, the link of his LinkedIn will be in the description of this video. Thank you for everyone. Bye. See you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.